The first sound that shattered the ballroom wasn't applause or music. It was glass. A champagne flute toppled and burst against the marble, sharp fragments skittering under the glow of chandeliers. 200 guests turned in unison, their voices caught mid-laughter, their smiles curdling into silence. And there I stood, rooted at the center of it all, with the sting of my mother's palm still burning across my cheek. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I only heard the echo of that strike ripple through the cavernous hall like a gunshot. That was the moment the story became public. But the story hadn't started there. Hours earlier, the Grand View Hotel was still waking. Staff hurried across polished floors with trays of orchids, gold-edged menus, and towers of white linen. The air smelled of roses and roasted almonds, the fragrance of a wedding rehearsed to perfection. I slipped through the lobby in a navy silk dress that fell like water against my skin. It was sharp, understated, not what the magazines would call bridal adjacent. But it was mine. Madison. Her voice, even in greeting, felt like a verdict. My mother's eyes swept over me with the precision of a critic measuring brushstrokes on a painting she already hated. That dress, she said, pausing as though the sight of it pained her. Still determined to look like a banker instead of a woman? I smiled, not warmly, but the way one does when armor has been honed for years. Good morning to you too, Mom. Her gaze slid past me like I was smoke. Sophia looks radiant, doesn't she? A bride should glow. Some women are simply made for joy. The implication needed no translation. My younger sister, Sophia, with her crown of curls and wide-eyed softness, drifted into the room as if she were born for the role. She wore a satin robe, her laughter chiming as bridesmaids clustered around her, adjusting veils and complimenting every detail. She looked like the center of a painting. And I? I was the shadow in the corner of the frame. I'd wired $50,000 into their account to cover the florals, the orchestra, the photographs no one would forget. My name wouldn't appear on the program, of course. I was the silent contributor, the invisible scaffolding holding Sophia's fairy tale upright. But even scaffolding cracks under weight. Madison, check the seating chart, my father called without turning. And don't rearrange it like you always do. You complicate everything. I crossed the ballroom and skimmed the chart. Divorced couples placed together. Rivals seated side by side. A disaster disguised as celebration. But correcting it would only sharpen my reputation as the difficult one. Of course, Dad, I answered. My voice was steady, though the muscles in my jaw twitched. You'll understand one day when you have a family, he added. His tone was gentle, almost paternal, but the words cut deep. If you ever manage to settle down. The laughter from nearby relatives floated over like smoke from a fire I hadn't lit but had been choking on my whole life. Poor Madison. 32 and no ring. So much for all that ambition. I wanted to tell them that the skyline belonged to me. That the penthouse overlooking this very hotel bore my name alone on its deed. That my signature inked contracts worth more than this entire wedding. But I didn't. Truth has no value in a room determined not to believe it. Instead, I walked to the far window. Beyond the glass, the city shimmered under morning light, steel towers catching fire from the rising sun. Somewhere among them, on the 45th floor, was my home, for 1,000 feet of proof that I had built something that could never be dismissed. A sanctuary carved from years of red-eye flights, boardroom battles, and silent sacrifices. It should have been enough. Yet here, in this ballroom dripping with roses and champagne, I was still the daughter measured against another, still the one cast as too much and never enough. Sophia caught my reflection in the window and floated over, all soft perfume and practiced innocence. Still in navy, I see, she teased, eyes flicking across my dress. I told Mom you'd never wear anything romantic. But that's fine. Some people just aren't meant for spotlight moments. Her words were gentle enough to be framed as a joke, but I felt the sting all the same. I tucked my hands into the folds of my dress, hiding the tremor that threatened to show. Congratulations, Sophia. Everything looks perfect. Of course it does, she said, smiling. It's my wedding day. And in that smile, I caught the first glimmer of something I couldn't name then, entitlement sharpened into expectation. The music swelled as the guests began to arrive, glitter spilling into the ballroom, voices buzzing with anticipation. None of them knew what was coming. Neither did I. But when the champagne shattered hours later and the sting of my mother's hand carved itself into memory, I understood. Perfection had never been the plan. The ballroom transformed as noon approached. Guests arrived in a parade of sequins and tailored suits, voices weaving into a steady hum. Champagne glasses clinked, cameras flashed, and every step of the bride was photographed as if Sophia were royalty. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, smiling politely when spoken to, nodding at distant relatives who squinted as though trying to remember my name. Madison, Aunt Sally trilled, clutching my arm. Her perfume was dizzying, a sugary cloud that stuck to the air. "How's that little apartment of yours?" "Still cozy." My lips curved in the faintest smile. "It's comfortable." She laughed before I could finish, already turning to the circle of cousins beside her. "See? Our Madison's modest. Unlike the rest of us who dream too big." They chuckled, indulgent and dismissive, as though I had just confessed to still sleeping in a college dorm. The truth, 45 floors up, glass walls that touched the sky, sat heavy on my tongue, but I swallowed it. What was the point? My life had never been their truth. Across the room, Sophia twirled in her gown as guests showered her with adoration. I watched as my parents beamed, pride radiating from them like heat. "Our Sophia," they said to anyone within earshot. "She's everything a mother could want. Kind, graceful, selfless." The words settled on me like ash. I had contributed more to this wedding than anyone in the room, but my name didn't make the script. I wasn't a daughter here. I was a placeholder. A prop. I slipped toward the refreshment table, desperate for a glass of water. Instead, my cousin Derek intercepted me with a smirk. "Still single, Mads? No date tonight." The surrounding cousins leaned in, already grinning at the punchline they assumed was coming. "Some of us," I said, picking up a glass, "choose carefully." Derek's laugh came sharp and mocking. Translation: "No one will put up with her." The laughter rippled again, low and cruel. For a moment, I felt 12 years old, back in our childhood kitchen, Sophia holding court while I was told to stop being difficult, stop being loud, stop being me. I turned, determined to slip away, when my father's voice rang out from the head table. "Family comes first, Madison." It was the refrain of my life, spoken like scripture. But his eyes, fixed on Sophia, told the whole truth. Family meant her, not me. The orchestra swelled with a bright melody as waiters began herding guests toward their seats for the reception. The gold-accented tables gleamed under candlelight, every rose petal meticulously arranged. I sat alone at the edge of the room, the music muffled by the pounding of my own pulse. Something was coming. I felt it in the restless way my parents whispered to each other, in the sly glance Sophia cast my way before adjusting her veil. A stage had been built, and I was standing in its shadow. I just didn't know yet that I was about to become the centerpiece. The reception had reached its warm, glittering peak. The chandeliers blazed, violins softened into a romantic refrain, and guests leaned toward each other with flushed faces and champagne smiles. I thought I had survived the day. Then the sound of silver striking glass pierced the air, cling, cling, cling. Every conversation died at once. My father stood at the head table, his shoulders squared, his voice amplified by the microphone he had no business holding. "Before we continue the celebration," he began, "Carol and I would like to give our daughter and her new husband something truly special." I froze. My glass of champagne tilted untouched in my hand. "Our Sophia deserves a home worthy of her heart," he continued, pride swelling with every syllable. "And that's why we are delighted to announce that Madison has graciously decided to gift her sister the keys to her penthouse apartment as a wedding present." The room erupted. Gasps, applause, a few cheers. Sophia pressed her hands to her chest, her face arranged into practiced astonishment. A glittering tear rolled down her cheek as she whispered into her own microphone, "Madison, really?" The penthouse. 200 pairs of eyes turned toward me. The walls seemed to close in. I heard only fragments of the crowd's murmurs, so generous. Such a sacrifice. What a perfect sister. But my throat locked. My father's smile widened as he beckoned me forward. Come, Madison. Join us. Let the family stand together for this moment. The moment. The ambush. My pulse hammered. In that second, I realized what had been building all morning: the whispers, the knowing glances, the way my parents had been circling like sharks. This wasn't an accident. It was a performance. And I was their unwilling prop. I placed my glass on the table with care, my hands steady though my insides burned. I walked forward, each step echoing across marble. I'm sorry, I said, my voice carrying even without a microphone. What did you just say? The applause faltered. My father cleared his throat. Your penthouse, sweetheart. For Sophia. You've agreed. I haven't. The silence cracked, replaced by a wave of whispers. My mother's face blanched before hardening into fury. Don't be selfish, she hissed into the mic, the venom disguised as maternal wisdom. It's your sister's wedding day. Do you want to embarrass us? My chest tightened, but my voice did not waver. It's my property. And I haven't agreed to give it to anyone. Gasps. A chair scraped. Sophia's tears turned theatrical, her lower lip trembling as she whispered into her microphone, I thought you wanted me to be happy. The crowd shifted, sympathy sliding toward her, judgment settling on me. The air was thick with expectation, with pressure pressing down from every side. And then her hand. It came swift, sharp, and merciless. My mother's palm collided with my face, the crack amplified by the very microphone she still clutched. The ballroom stilled. Cameras froze. Breath caught. My diamond earring clattered across the marble floor like a verdict. The silence after the slap was so complete I could hear the chandeliers humming above us. My cheek burned, my ears rang, but I refused to lift a hand to my face. If I acknowledged the sting, it would mean she'd won. For a long, unbearable moment, no one moved. 200 witnesses, caught between horror and curiosity, stared at me as if waiting for a script. Then the whispers began. How could she refuse? On her sister's wedding day, ungrateful. Selfish. Every word landed heavier than the slap itself. My mother still gripped the microphone, her chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. Do you see what I deal with? She said to the crowd, her voice cracking with feigned martyrdom. Even now, she refuses family. She refuses love. The room shifted. Some nodded, eager to align with her. Others looked away, uncomfortable with what had just played out. Sophia's eyes glistened with well-practiced sorrow as she whispered, I just wanted us to be close. I stood alone in the center of the storm, a villain painted in real time. But then a sound. Ping. A notification from a phone somewhere in the crowd. Then another. And another. I followed the trail of glowing screens until I saw it. Brian's younger brother at table 6, his phone propped up, red dot blinking at the corner. Live. Broadcasting. To the world. My stomach flipped. This wasn't a private humiliation anymore. It was everywhere. My clutch vibrated against my palm. I glanced down. 3 missed calls from Marcus. Then a text, I'm watching. Say the word. Relief mingled with dread. Marcus, my mentor, my CEO, the man who controlled nearly half my father's company, had seen everything. And now, the entire internet had too. I slipped the phone back into my clutch before anyone noticed, my heartbeat steadying. My father's voice boomed into the mic, desperate now. She's always been difficult. Always too proud. But family comes first, Madison. Family means sacrifice. Sacrifice. That word again. It had been the soundtrack of my childhood. I was to sacrifice my time, my image, my worth, my peace, all for Sophia's spotlight. I raised my head, scanning the crowd, their expectant eyes. Family doesn't ambush each other, I said, my voice low but carrying. The weight of it settled like a stone across the ballroom. A ripple of unease passed through the guests. The waitstaff had stopped mid-motion, frozen with trays still balanced. Even the violinist's bow hung in the air. My mother stepped closer, her hand trembling, eyes sharp with rage. You will give her the keys. Do you hear me? You will. No, the single word dropped like lead, final and immovable. Her face crumpled, part disbelief, part fury. But before she could speak again, another sound cut through the room, a door opening at the far end of the hall. Heavy footsteps. Murmurs. Heads turning. The ballroom doors swung open with the weight of inevitability. Conversation fractured into whispers as heads turned. Marcus Chin entered like a storm in a tailored suit, flanked by two attorneys whose leather briefcases gleamed beneath the chandeliers. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. His presence alone cut through the air sharper than my mother's slap ever had. Richard. Carol. His gaze moved across the head table, then landed on me. And Madison. My father's chair screeched against marble as he scrambled to stand. Mr. Chin, but Marcus held up a hand. Silence fell again, absolute and merciless. I've just witnessed, Marcus said, his tone steady as steel, a public attempt to coerce one of my senior executives into surrendering personal property. An attempt broadcast live for thousands to see. Gasps fluttered through the guests. Phones buzzed with fresh notifications. Sophia's tears halted mid-performance. Senior executive? My father's voice cracked, confusion thick in every syllable. Yes, Marcus replied, stepping forward, the sound of his shoes echoing like a countdown. Vice President of Development. The woman who built our Asia-Pacific expansion. The architect of deals you've bragged about at your country club. His eyes narrowed. Madison Hayes. The words rippled through the crowd like electricity. No, my mother spat, shaking her head. You're lying. She's just. Her sentence faltered under the weight of her own disbelief. Just what? Marcus countered. Just a daughter who never fit your mold? Just a scapegoat for your disappointments? Let me make this clear. She is not your financial lifeline. She is not your scapegoat. She is not yours to take from. I swallowed hard. My pulse thundered, but for the first time in years, I felt taller. Scene. Marcus placed a folder on the head table. Pages slid free, filled with signatures and seals. Clause 15.3 of our shareholder agreement, Richard. Moral turpitude, coercion, conduct unbecoming of leadership. Your behavior tonight triggers it. My father's face drained of color. You can't, I can, Marcus said simply. Between my 40% stake and the Jensen Trust's 15, I can call a vote within 24 hours. Your company, Richard, hangs by a thread. And Carol, he turned his gaze to my mother. Assaulting your own daughter in public? That's not family. That's violence. The word hung heavy, undeniable. All eyes shifted back to me. My mother's lips trembled, rage curdling into desperation. Madison, tell him to stop. Tell him this isn't what you want. I stepped forward. My cheeks still burned, but my voice was steady, clear. What I want, I said, is to never be your sacrifice again. The room stilled, the air charged with finality. Sophia's practiced sob broke into a raw cry. You're ruining my wedding. No, I whispered, though the microphone carried my voice across every corner of the hall. I'm reclaiming myself. And in that moment, under crystal chandeliers, before 200 witnesses and thousands more watching online, I stopped being their shadow. The ballroom never recovered. Voices rose in chaos as Marcus's words sank in, contracts threatened, reputations bleeding out across live-stream feeds. My parents clutched each other, their polished facade fracturing under the weight of consequence. Sophia collapsed into her chair, veil trembling, mascara streaking down her cheeks. And me? I walked out. Not hurried, not hiding. My heels clicked against marble with the rhythm of finality, each step carrying me farther from their stage, their script, their control. Behind me, the room roared, but it no longer belonged to me. The elevator doors closed, sealing me in a cocoon of silence. I touched the welt on my cheek, still hot, still aching, and for the first time that day, I allowed myself to feel it. The sting wasn't just from her hand. It was 32 years condensed into one blow, every dismissal, every comparison, every invisible contribution collapsing into that single crack of skin against skin. By the time I reached my penthouse, the city had darkened into a quilt of lights. I stood at the glass wall, the skyline stretching endless, and breathed for what felt like the first time. My phone buzzed again, messages flooding in. Clips of the slap already cut into GIFs. Headline scrolling, CEO's protege defends property from family. Slap heard around the city. But I didn't open them. The internet could feast. I had nothing left to give. Instead, I poured a glass of wine, cold and sharp, and held it against my cheek before drinking. The quiet was thick, but not empty. It was freedom. Marcus called. "It's done," he said simply. "Your father knows his options. They won't touch you again." "Thank you," I whispered. "You don't owe me thanks. You earned this." His voice softened. "You've been carrying their weight too long. Let it go." When the line disconnected, I stared out at the glowing veins of traffic below, the city humming with life. Somewhere in that ballroom, my parents were spinning excuses. Sophia was mourning the collapse of her perfect narrative, and the guests were already deciding whose side to take. But none of that reached me. For the first time, I wasn't waiting to be acknowledged. I wasn't standing in a shadow. I wasn't someone else's backup plan. I was just Madison. I thought of the earring that had skittered across the floor, catching the chandelier light before I picked it up. Fragile. Brilliant. Knocked down, but not broken. That was me. I set my glass aside and let the city lights wash over me. My sanctuary. My proof. Family had always been defined for me as sacrifice, obedience, silence. But standing there, the skyline reflected in glass, I understood the truth. Family is not the people who demand your worth. It is the people who honor it. I had lost a mother, a father, a sister that night. But I had gained something far greater, the unshakable certainty that my life, my peace, my hard-won joy would never again be theirs to take. The city pulsed below, endless and alive. I raised the curtain of glass with a single hand and let the night air rush in, cool against my bruised skin. I was no one's sacrifice now.